Welcome everybody, I'm a Challenger mid lane coach from EU West, and with me we got ourselves AJ, a Challenger mid lane coach from NA. We're both coaching in the MLA, link in the description. We're going to be discussing the new meta because a new patch has dropped, and this is crazy, absolutely crazy. This is going to warp the entire meta. We're going to give our predictions, what you can expect, and how you can influence your champion pool depending on what the changes are going to be. We're going to start off with Atakan. Very simple change, TLDR. What does this mean for the game, AJ?
Yeah, I mean, all you guys have to understand with this autocon is that they're simplifying it. No more two forms, and you just get a little more XP. So overall, the autocon is not changing that much. You're still gonna play around it the same way as you have. So yeah, just don't overcomplicate it, guys. I think it's gonna be pretty much the same.
Absolutely. Don't stress too much about the outcome. The bounties,
Yes.
though, this is actually a pretty significant change. For the specifics, recommend that you read it. What does this specifically mean for the meta? Well, scaling champs becomes slightly stronger with this change purely. So this change purely has the intention to make scaling a little bit more understandable and easier to grasp. We also have probably the biggest change from the entire patch. Void Grubs gone at minute 6, starting to minute 8, only one spawn timer, less objectives, more isolated laner. What does this mean in your eyes?
Yeah, so what it means is, yeah, champions like, control mages, champions that don't really like early skirmishes and want isolated, long, elongated 1v1s for about almost two full more minutes. It's going to help a lot for those champions. They're going to love this change, right? Champions like Victor comes to mind. For me.
Yeah,
And also champions that push kind of go down just a tiny bit because the actual damage of the grub is a little bit lower. So I'd say going forward, that's kind of how you want to view the grubs. Not as powerful as before, but there's only one grub that we have to contest, so longer laning phase, which benefits control mages.
absolutely. We're also going to see this in the tier list that we're going to be showing at the end of the video right here. So, besides that, we have to discuss a few small champ changes. Any, right, slight numbers increase. Changes didn't really hit the mark last patch, so they're kind of buffing her up. We don't really think that this is going to necessarily impact any as the champion itself. Champ is still going to be quite, not really suited towards the mid lane role. Definitely good buffs towards her numbers, though. Very similar to Nefiri, right? Nefiri was super strong, and these number changes do slightly reduce her in power, but we don't necessarily think that this is going to remove her from mid. She's still going to be strong, but maybe a little bit more balanced right now. Also, some Orianna changes. Slightly weaker in the first 7 levels, starting level 8. A little bit less Q mana reduction. Have you seen much Orianna? What do you think of this, AJ?
Few here and there. There's a lot of NA Ori players or like GM challenges. Champ is strong, just very difficult. What I will say is this incentivizes Q max a little bit more now. Just very slightly tunes the needle because they've been maxing W. So maybe they will put more points into Q now. But we'll see.
Absolutely. There's a few other changes that we have to keep note of, right? And one of these things is that Swifty Boots got slightly nerfed,
Yes.
still decent. Symbiotic Soul's completely different. So all of these cheesy strategies with resets,
Mhm.
they're going to be slightly nerfed in general. And we're also going to be seeing this in the tier list later down the line. Very similar is with the ROA changes. A lot of champs were building this in the meta. And these changes, in our opinion, we've done a little bit of the maths. We lose 50 HP, 5 AP. It's about 150 to 200 like raw gold numbers.
Mhm.
Quite heavy upon item completion. This item, instead of it being rushed every single time, will definitely go down a little bit in strength. And one of the main reasons why people bought the ROA is also because of the double ruby crystal early start. This was super strong in the early skirmishes, which will slightly get reduced due to grubs changes, and therefore the power of the item definitely goes down significantly. Snowballing as well gets a little bit more emphasized with the tier 3 boots upgrades being a little bit better and cheaper. And we're definitely going to see therefore some big changes in the meta, more isolated lane. What do you think about Ignite and the biscuits here, AJ?
Yeah, so Ignite, I'm not really sure how to think about it because this is an early game centric rune already or a summoner spell. So it doesn't really, it's not that much stronger early game. I think this will just help a little bit for later in the game, assassinating a key target as like a Talon or something. You're playing Ignite Talon. I don't really think it's going to change that much. Just a pretty simple change, in my opinion. Um, Biscuits, this one's a much bigger of a change, right? Because before, what people will do is actually conserve their biscuits. So now we're going to be seeing less of that. I think biscuits are going to be way less prolific. So now you're not going to feel as pigeonholed to going biscuits every single game. I think that's the key to this change.
Yeah, definitely changes in the right direction. So we got to
Yes.
understand, like, in the big picture, how does this influence the meta? Well, our results from our conclusions here were that we think that the lane is going to be a little bit extended. We do also think that therefore the isolate lane is going to be stronger. Getting the priority and keeping the priority will definitely be good in the early game. It's going to be a little bit more bot lane centric comparatively towards supports roaming up and everyone swapping up towards the groups. It's going to be a little bit slower, which is definitely a welcome change towards all of the action that we saw in the past few months. But also a little bit of scaling compensation when it comes to the bounties. So we got a little bit stronger isolated early lane, but also to compensate a little bit better ways for teams that scale a little bit harder to come back. Anything you want to add to this?
No, I think you're spot on. I think what we're gonna see a lot of is, well, not even just mid, but top and bot. We're gonna see way more emphasis on winning bot lanes, right? Because there's less top objectives. So what does that mean for us as a mid laner, right? Well, what that means for us as a mid laner is that maybe we can either play, a skirmisher that can kind of go bot and facilitate bot, right, or kill a scaling bot lane, or we could also play a control mage, right? Because we have a elongated 1v1 now, right? More isolated 1v1. So it's kind of, you kind of got two different wheels turning. I'm not really sure which one is going to come out on top. In my opinion, I do think control mages are going to have way more of an edge than they did previously. Um, and that's my take. And you're going to see that reflected in the tier list.
So this is a tier list, a lot of big changes, and we're going to start off with Azir because we put this one at hidden OP. AJ, elaborate.
Yep. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and make a prediction here. I already think Azir was honestly one of the best mids of the last patch. If you watch pro play, it's literally picked or banned every single game in Fearless, no matter what. Without doubt, every single mid laner in the world has been playing it. And that was with grubs being so prevalent, so many early game skirmishes, etc. Right now, with the changes, right, this champ perfectly encapsulate the new changes. Right, there's the bounty change, which means scaling is better, right? There's elongated 1v1, which guess what Azir is really damn good at doing once he's level 7? Elongated 1v1, right? There's less skirmishes. Guess what he really hates? Early game skirmishes. So the fact that he was already at A tier, in my opinion, mid, or like almost borderline S last patch, and all of these changes going in, I think he's going to be the best mid on the patch. And, again, specifically for climbing higher and higher elo, basically every single mid laner past like IGM plays Azir, and there's a reason why.
Champ is incredible. We also have some
Yes.
other like real changes that points out our predictions that we made with what's going to happen in the patch, right? We see very clear drops in skirmish oriented champs. We see that
Yes.
the Galio, the Ahri, the Ryze, and even this is so much worse when it comes to this isolated lane, especially with also the Roa change, right? These are champs
Yes.
that were running Roa. And if you're now going to be matching up against the Victor, who's very strong already in the isolated 1v1, gets himself a Ludens or a Blackfire, and he starts gunning you down with these lasers, it's just a lot harder for you to sustain. Very similar with the LeBlanc and the Aurora. These champs, they had a niche. But for now, the only time I see them work is maybe if someone blind picks Silas and you want to counter pick it with LeBlanc or Aurora or so like that. You want to nuke lane. But besides that, it's just really hard to make these champs work, especially going to be isolated lane versus Victor. You're going to be in a hell of a position.
Yeah.
We have some other notable mentions, right? What about the Radiant Soul here?
Yep, ASOL, so people might be surprised seeing in a Masters Plus tier list ASOL. What you have to keep in mind, guys, is that ASOL actually also likes, he's like similar to Zir. He likes elongated lane phases. And funny enough, all the champs that are good at elongated lane phases, ASOL does really well into as well, right? Like people pick ASOL into Victor. They pick ASOL into Syndra. They pick ASOL even into Oriana. And that's because after you get to a certain point, ASOL does very, very well into these champions, and he has that hyper scaling X factor, which again, bounty system, very, very good for ASOL. So that's why I'm making kind of a prediction here, because we haven't seen much ASOL recently, but I think he might get a little bit of a rise up, be a little bit better, right? And same thing with Ziggs and Xerath. I want to highlight Ziggs and Xerath here. It's the same thing, right? These champions really like isolated 1v1s, right? Ziggs is pretty solid because he has a lot of poke, right? He kind of can beat out some of these other mages, and he scales very, very well, right? Same thing with Xerath. And so I think these like three champions are kind of really, really good at the champions that are in S, in my opinion, or in high A, which would be like the Ori, the Talia, and the Victor. And I think these champions can do very well into these picks.
Yeah, well said. And there's going to be some questions about the likes of Mel and the likes of Wei,
Yes.
right? These champs, they
Yes.
do a very similar thing. Of course, they're happy with
Yes.
a little bit of isolated lane, but these champs just take a little bit too long to get online still. And the stats that you
Yes.
get, just the raw damage that you put out, it's just generally lower than a Victor. Why would you pick a
Yeah.
Wei if you can pick Victor, you know? You said it already, you were very adamant about it
That's how
in
I
the
felt
chat.
about that too. Yeah, like I played a game earlier and it was like this guy was like 1600 LP challenger. I was landing every spell his way against Victor, and then we both reset. He was down like 3 CS, and then all of a sudden in a team fight he's doing double my damage. So it's like, why the fuck did I do all that work playing Hui?
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about Hui right now compared to Victor at least.
So
Same thing with
there's
Mel.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So there's a final thing that I really want to note, right? Is we mentioned that there might be a different direction that the meta might go.
Yes.
We may see some wild shit happening on bot.
Yeah.
We may see the double AD carry Ashe Varus
Yes.
2022 Worlds meta come back up. And
Zeri Lulu.
Sari Lulu, the scaling, the enchanters,
Shinami. Yeah.
ranged stuff, the lane bullies. So if that happens, right, we might see some Akali action, you know?
Yes.
Some counters that do really well versus these individual champs. Of course, Zeri Lulu, you don't want to be playing Akali into, but if you play against two Ashe Varus on bot,
Mhm.
Akali's value is of course absolutely through the roof. So
Yeah.
there may be angles where these skirmish-oriented champs, like the Ryze, like the Ahri, and like the LeBlanc, can, or like Aurora even, can find value. Absolutely possible, but we just don't really think that that's the most likely case for the scenarios to play out. But
Especially a solo
never
queue
say never.
environment.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I think maybe for competitive, potentially, there's a chance that you'll see a lot of these champs come back and the meta, like these squishy double range bot lanes. But in solo queue, like who has the balls to do that? Especially if you've been like as a support, you've been playing 2 years of engaged support. All of a sudden, like you're not going to just switch to just playing Ashe all of a sudden. So just
Yeah,
keep that in mind. This is tailored to solo queue. So I think that while there may be a shift in competitive, I think in solo queue it's going to be a lot slower. Like I don't think the immediate next patch you're going to see the immediate results. Oh, okay, double bot every game, right?
absolutely. As a final thing to note, right, we got the Cho and the Echo, Cho and Echo mains
Yep.
getting quite sad. Feel free to finish off this video here with why these champs here a
very,
little bit lower.
very simply, guys, no symbiotic, right? That was like what enabled some of these high wave clear weak melee mids to be able to play, right?
Yeah,
Like specifically Echo and Cho'Gath. And so those boosts being nerfed really, really hurts these champions, their flexibility. They have to be more counter picks now rather than just an average champion, in my opinion.
absolutely. So if you guys have any questions about the tier list, let us know down in the comments, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. Hopefully that tier list is going to be a little bit less wild comparatively towards this one, but we're going to have to see how this changes settle. And next week we're going to come back. In 2 weeks we're going to come back even harder. So enjoy this patch, guys.